let me say something that's going to make a lot of people on the internet very uncomfortable. Millennials and Gen Z are not lazy. They're not avocado toast addicted, participation trophy collecting, job hopping failures who just can't figure out adulting. That narrative, the one you probably heard from a relative at Thanksgiving, is not just wrong, it is statistically wrong. Here's the number that woke me up. Young people today have 86% less purchasing power than baby boomers had in their 20s. Let that sit for a second. Not 10% less, not 30% less, 86%. Meaning if your parents could buy $1 worth of financial future in their 20s, you can buy about 14 cents of that same future today. And yet, somehow, you're the problem? Let me show you exactly why this happened. Not to make you angry, not to make you feel like a victim, but because understanding the system is the only way to stop being crushed by it. And I want to start with a man named Ronald Read. Ronald Read was a janitor. He pumped gas for most of his life. He wore safety pins to hold his coat together. Nobody who knew him thought he had a dime to his name. When Ronald Read died in 2014, he left behind an estate worth $8 million. I'm going to tell you exactly how he did that. But not yet, because first, you need to understand the game that was being played around him. The same game being played around you right now. Let's start with the biggest one. I want you to travel back to 1950 with me for a moment. The war is over. The economy is booming. A young guy, let's call him your grandfather, gets a job at a factory or an office. He's 24 years old. He wants to buy a house. The median home price in America in 1950? $7,350. His median annual wage? About $3,300. So he needs roughly 2.2 years of his salary to buy a house. 2.2 years. He saves for a couple years, puts money down, gets a manageable mortgage, and that's it. He's a homeowner in his mid-20s. Now let's come back to today. The median home price in America right now is hovering around $430,000. The median household income, not individual household, meaning often two people working, is roughly $70,000. You now need over 6 years of total household income to buy a median home. And that's before we talk about a down payment. Before we talk about mortgage rates that have been bouncing between 6% and 8%. Before we talk about property taxes, homeowners insurance, or the fact that in cities where most jobs actually are, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Austin, that $430,000 median doesn't buy you a closet. There's a term for this metric. Economists call it the home-to-income ratio. And when you plot it on a chart going back to 1950, you see something that should genuinely disturb you. It was relatively stable, around 2 to 3x, for most of the 20th century. Then something happened around the 1980s. It started climbing, and it has never really come back down. We've now blown past even the 1980s levels, which economists at the time thought were dangerously high. So what happened? A few things collided at once, and they all made the problem worse. After World War II, cities and suburbs began implementing restrictive zoning, single-family-only zones that legally prevented the construction of apartments or duplexes in huge swaths of the country. This artificially constrained supply. When supply is constrained and demand keeps growing, what happens to price? It goes up, always. Then there are institutional investors, large hedge funds, real estate investment trusts, private equity firms that have entered the single-family home market in a serious way over the last 15 years. In some markets, they've been buying 20 to 30% of available inventory. When cash buyers competing with families using mortgages enter the market en masse, prices go up faster than wages can track. And here's the one nobody talks about. Millions of existing homeowners are trapped in their homes, not because they can't sell, but because they won't. They locked in a 2.75% mortgage rate in 2020 or 2021. If they sell and try to buy something new at 7%, their monthly payment on the same price home essentially doubles. So they stay. Inventory stays low. Prices stay high. It is a system that rewards those who got in early and punishes anyone who was born too late for the party. I've seen the comment section. I know what some of you are thinking. Just move somewhere cheaper. And look, there's real truth to that. But here's the problem with that advice as a complete solution. The places with the most jobs, the highest salaries, the best opportunities for career growth are overwhelmingly the places where housing is most expensive. And the places where housing is cheap often have wage markets to match. You can move from San Francisco to rural Ohio and cut your rent in half. but you might also cut your salary by 60%. The arbitrage isn't always clean. And here's the thing about homeownership that makes this matter beyond just having a place to sleep. In America, homeownership is a primary vehicle through which the middle class builds generational wealth. Home equity, leverage appreciation, the ability to borrow against your asset, the stability that allows you to take career risks. When an entire generation is priced out of that vehicle, they're not just priced out of a house. They're priced out of the wealth-building machine that worked for their parents and grandparents. That's the housing trap. And the moment you understand it as a systemic trap rather than a personal failure, something shifts. Because you stop asking what's wrong with me, and you start asking, how do I navigate around this? We'll get there. But first, let's talk about the debt you took on to get a job that still doesn't let you afford that house. $1,700 billion. That is the current outstanding student loan debt in the United States. $1.7 trillion. To put that in perspective, that is larger than the GDP of most countries on Earth. It is larger than the entire credit card debt of all Americans combined. And the majority of it is carried by people under 40. Here's how we got here. In 1991, the average annual cost of four-year public university, tuition, fees, room, and board, was around $5,243. Today, the average is well over $28,000 per year. That is more than a 450% increase over roughly 30 years, during a period when general inflation was around 120%. Tuition didn't just go up. Tuition went up on a completely different trajectory than everything else in the economy. And the predictable result, the average student loan balance at graduation has tripled since the 1990s. Now, I won't be precise here because this is a topic where people talk past each other constantly. The student debt crisis is not primarily a story about underwater law school graduates or people with $200,000 in grad school debt who went into poetry. That's a real thing, but it's not the bulk of the problem. The bulk of the problem is ordinary people who were told universally by every guidance counselor and every parent and every cultural signal that a college degree was the minimum viable ticket to the middle class. They were not wrong to believe that. In 1985, they would have been completely correct. The problem is the ticket price inflated faster than the value of the ticket. And here's the part that really stings, what economists call degree devaluation. In 1970, only about 11% of Americans had a four-year college degree. If you had one, you were genuinely differentiated in the labor market. Employers competed for you. Today, that number is closer to 38%. And here's the cruel math. There are now 250% more college graduates competing for the same professional jobs than there were in 1970. So the credential that was supposed to set you apart now sets you even with most of your competition, except now you're starting the race $37,500 behind the starting line. I want to tell you about a concept called the arms race dynamic in credentialing. When everyone gets a bachelor's degree, the bachelor's becomes a floor, not the ceiling. Employers start filtering for master's degrees. Then master degrees become common, and PhDs become the new differentiator. This is not a conspiracy. It's just a natural outcome of flooding a labor market with credentials. But someone is paying for every rung of that ladder, and that someone is you. The student loan system has a feature that makes it particularly insidious, and I say this without political judgment, just as a mechanical observation. Federal student loans are not underwritten based on your ability to repay them. When a bank gives you a mortgage, they look at your income, your debt load, your credit score. They try imperfectly to assess whether you can actually pay this back. Federal student loans don't work that way. You can borrow $60,000 to get a degree in a field where the median starting salary is $38,000 per year, and nobody in the process will flag that as a potential problem. This is not because the government is malicious. It's because the original design assumed that education was always an asset that would pay for itself. That assumption was correct until it wasn't. So, where does that leave someone who already has a debt? First, take a breath. The debt doesn't disqualify you from building wealth. It's a headwind, not a wall. Plenty of people have navigated it. But here's the framework I think about this with. Your student loan is a fixed cost. Your income is a variable you can influence. The goal is to increase the variable faster than the fixed cost compounds. That means your career choices, not your spending habits, are the primary lever here. We'll come back to that in a moment, because I want to talk about the thing that might actually be destroying more wealth than your mortgage or your student loans combined. It's your car. I'm going to say something that might make you feel a little attacked. Not my intention, but fair warning. The average new car payment in America right now is between $716 and $742 per month. And here's the number that made my jaw drop when I first saw it. 15.7% of new car buyers are now committing to monthly payments of $1,000 or more. 1 in 6 Americans buying a car is paying more for their car per month than many people pay for rent. And the way the industry makes it seem manageable, the trick they use is stretching the loan term. The average car loan term is now 69 months, nearly 6 years. Think about what that means. You finance a car for 6 years. Most financial experts say a car starts losing significant reliability after 8 to 10 years and 150,000 miles. So you spend 6 years paying for the car. The car is then 2 to 4 years away from major repair territory. And what does a dealership offer you around year 4 or 5? Hey, you've been a great customer. Want to upgrade. And here's the trap. At that point, you still owe more on the car than it's worth. The dealer rolls your negative equity. They call it being underwater into your new loan. Your new $50,000 car now has a $55,000 loan on it from day one, and the cycle repeats. The reason cars are the number one wealth killer isn't just the payment. It's the complete ecosystem of costs people systematically underestimate. There's the payment. There's insurance, which goes up when you drive a newer, more expensive car. There's fuel. There's registration. There's maintenance. The American Automobile Association estimates the total annual cost of owning a new vehicle is around $12,000 per year when you add it all up. $12,000 a year going entirely to a depreciating asset. Now, here's where I want to give you something practical. A rule that will save you from ever making a catastrophic car decision. Financial advisors call it the April 20th 10 rule. I think of it as the 24-10 rule. Here's how it works. Put at least 20% down. Finance for no more than 4 years, and keep total transportation costs, payment, insurance, gas, everything under 10% of your gross monthly income. That's it. 3 numbers. 20, 4, 10. If you make $60,000 a year, your gross monthly income is $5,000. 10% of that is $500. Your total car payment plus insurance plus fuel should not exceed $500 a month combined. Now, go look at what a new average car costs at $716 a month, just a payment, and you see the problem. The 24-10 rule will, in many cases, point you toward a used car, a 2 or 3 year old certified pre-owned vehicle that someone else took the first 30% depreciation hit on. I know that's not the fun answer. I know the new car smell is real. I know the dealership experience is designed by psychologists to make you feel like you've arrived somewhere. But let me give you this. If you took the difference between a $716 new car payment and a $350 used car payment, just $366 per month, and invested it in a boring index fund earning the historical average of around 10% per year, after 10 years you'd have roughly $70,000. After 20 years, $250,000. After 30 years, almost $800,000. Your car is not just a car. It is potentially your retirement. And this brings me to the deeper problem underneath all of this, the actual macro engine that is making everyone feel poorer even when the numbers go up. I want to tell you something about a mug. Imagine everyone in the country has a pile of cash sitting in front of them. Everyone has roughly the same amount. And there's one mug in the middle of the table. What's the mug worth? Whatever someone will pay for it. Now imagine the government doubles everyone's pile of cash overnight. Everyone has twice as many dollars. Is the mug worth more now? No, the mug is the same mug. It didn't get better. It didn't get more useful. But now there are twice as many dollars chasing it. So the price of the mug goes up, not because the mug got more valuable, but because the money got less valuable. That's inflation. That's currency debasement. And it's been happening to varying degrees for your entire life. Here is where this gets really important for understanding why young people feel so financially trapped, even when they're doing everything right. Salaries, over time, tend to rise with general inflation, roughly 2 to 3% per year on average. Assets, houses, stocks, tend to rise faster. The S&P 500 has averaged around 10 to 13% annually over long time horizon. Quality real estate in growing cities has done similarly. Do you see the gap? Your salary, 2 to 3% per year. Assets, 10 to 13% per year. If you're only saving cash, stuffing money in a savings account, keeping it under the mattress, even keeping it in a high-yield savings account at 4 or 5%. You are losing ground relative to the assets that build generational wealth. This is not a quirk or an accident. It is a mechanical reality of a monetary system that has expanded the money supply significantly over the last 50 years. I am not making a political argument here. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm telling you, this is the environment you are competing in, and knowing it changes how you should think about every dollar you save. A dollar saved in cash slowly loses value. A dollar invested in assets has historically grown at a rate that outpaces inflation. The people who built wealth over the last 50 years were not, for the most part, exceptional geniuses. They were people who owned assets, index funds, real estate, businesses, even small stakes in businesses through stock. The people who struggled were people who saved in cash, thinking they were being responsible, while inflation quietly eroded the purchasing power of every dollar they put away. And now, finally, let me tell you about Ronald Read. Ronald Read was not a finance genius. He did not have a secret. He did not have a rich uncle or an insider trading scheme. Ronald Read bought stocks in companies he understood: Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, railroad companies. Boring, dividend-paying American businesses. And then he did the most radical thing imaginable. He did nothing. He didn't sell when the market crashed in 1987. He didn't sell during the dot-com bust. He didn't sell in 2008 when it felt like the world was ending. He just held and reinvested his dividends and held some more. By the time he died at 92, his boring, forgotten portfolio of stocks and companies that make soap and bandages had grown to $8 million. There's a famous study that found that the best-performing brokerage accounts belonged to one of two types of people: those who had died and those who had completely forgotten they had the account, because they couldn't make emotional decisions. They couldn't panic sell. They couldn't take profits when the market was high, and by backing at the bottom, they just held. Ronald Read wasn't smart. He was patient. And patient in investing is the closest thing to a superpower. But here's the uncomfortable truth. None of this works if you're spending everything you earn on things that go down in value. And that brings me to maybe the most underrated force in personal finance. I want you to think about the last time you felt financially inadequate. Maybe it was scrolling through Instagram, someone from your high school posting a vacation, a colleague driving a new car, a friend buying a house. That feeling has a name. Psychologists call it social comparison theory, and it is, in the modern era, weaponized against you at a scale that has never existed before in human history. Every platform you use is an algorithm designed to surface the most aspirational version of other people's lives. Not the average, not the median, the peak. You are comparing your inside to everyone else's outside, and it is literally financially costing you money. There's a concept in behavioral economics called keeping up with the Joneses. It's a tendency to calibrate your spending not to your actual needs or financial goals, but to the visible consumption of your peers. New car, because your neighbor got one. Better apartment, because your friends moved somewhere nicer. Vacation, because everyone else seemed to go somewhere. Here's the thing about the Joneses that nobody tells you. The Joneses are broke. Not all of them. But statistically, the person driving the $80,000 car, wearing the designer watch, posting from the business class seat, there's a very good chance they are deeply, structurally in debt. Because wealth is what you don't see. Wealth is the unpurchased car, the coach seat taken on purpose, the 10-year-old phone that still works fine, the party not thrown, the upgrade declined. The people who quietly build real wealth are, almost by definition, invisible, because they are not performing wealth. They are building it. And here's the flip side. The part one actually find kind of freeing. Someone in a $100,000 car might be rich, but the only thing you know for certain when you see that car is that they have $100,000 less than they did before they bought it. A car is not proof of wealth. It is proof of a transaction. The most dangerous trap is performing the aesthetics of wealth before you've built the substance of wealth, because the aesthetics cost money, and money spent on aesthetics is money not compounding in an index fund. Now, I've spent a lot of this video laying out why the game is hard, why the system creates real structural headwinds for young people. And I believe all of that is true. But I would be doing you a disservice if I left it there. Because for all the real systemic challenges, the housing market, the debt, the inflation, the social pressure, there are still paths through. And I want to walk you through exactly what I would do, what the data actually supports, if I were starting from zero right now. All right, here's what actually works. Not opinions, data. The single biggest lever most people have on their income is not a side hustle or a savings hack. It's switching jobs. Study after study shows that staying at the same company results in raises of roughly 2 to 3% per year, which you now know barely keeps pace with inflation. Switching jobs every 2 to 3 years has historically produced salary increases of 10 to 30% per jump. That is not a small difference. Over a decade, someone who job hops strategically can end up earning double what their stay-put counterpart earns for doing the same work with the same skills. The labor market rewards switchers. Use that. The internet loves the side hustle narrative, and side hustles can work. But most side hustles plateau quickly because they trade time for money at a fixed rate. High-income skills are different. They are skills that the market pays a premium for: data analysis, software development, copywriting, sales, project management, financial modeling, UX design. These skills compound. They make you more valuable in your primary job and create optionality for freelance work. They are not passive, but they are leveraged. I'd rather you spend 6 months developing a skill that gets you a $20,000 raise than 6 months running a side hustle that nets you $200. Impulse spending is a silent leak in every budget. Here is the simplest system I know to stop it. Any non-essential purchase over a number you choose, let's say $50, requires a 48-hour waiting period before buying. For larger purchases, make it 7 days. Write the item down. Wait, then revisit. You will find that a significant percentage of the time, the desire has passed. The urgency was manufactured by marketing or emotion. The thing you needed on Friday doesn't feel nearly as necessary by Sunday. This single habit, consistently applied, can save the average person thousands of dollars per year. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, one of the greatest investors who ever lived, said the hardest part building wealth is hitting the first $100,000. After that, he said, compounding starts working for you instead of feeling impossible. He's right. And here's why. $100,000 invested at 10% per year generates $10,000 in a single year without you doing anything. That's almost $1 an hour raise just from existing. Get to $100,000. Do whatever it takes. Cut ruthlessly. Earn aggressively. Invest consistently. Get there. Then do what Ronald Read did. Hold. Reinvest. Wait. Look. The system is genuinely harder than it was for your parents. That's real. That's documented. You're not imagining it. But the people who understand the system, who know why housing is hard, why the car payment is a trap, why cash savings slowly bleeds, those people have an edge. Knowledge is not the same as the problem being solved, but it is the beginning of solving it. You're already ahead just for watching this far. The first step is always the hardest, but you just took it.